Pat Toomey went on Jake Tapper's show on CNN to talk about why he believes that the average American does not need a stimulus check. Now, you might say, well, Pat Toomey is from Pennsylvania. Doesn't he see all the Americans struggling, the average Americans? Well, the answer is no, because Pat Toomey is not from Pennsylvania. Matter of fact, Pat Toomey, I'm not even sure if he's American. I think he might be Martian, because he clearly doesn't understand what's going on this planet. Let's roll the clip.
Senator Pat Toomey from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania joins me now live. Senator, thanks so much for joining us, and Merry Christmas. I want to get your reaction to the president's latest tweet. He said, unless Republicans have a death wish, and it is also the right thing to do, they must approve the $2,000 payments ASAP. $600 is not enough. What do you think? What's your response? I notice you're in there are 5 Republican senators that have come out in favor of increasing the payment from $600 to $2,000, but you are among that's 5 Republican senators. You're among the 47 Republican senators that have not.
Well, that's right, Jake, and I'm not going to, because I think it's a very bad idea. I mean, let's be clear about what we're talking about here. We're talking about sending checks, the vast majority of which will be going to people who've had no loss of income whatsoever. That's just a fact. How and why does that make any sense at all? Oh, and by the way, when you bring this direct payment up to $2,000, the total cost is almost 2/3 of $1 trillion. It's over $600 billion, most of which, I mean, the vast majority of which will go to people who had no lost income whatsoever. You know, this makes no sense. We're in a very different place today than we were back in March. And it was of dubious merit back in March. But then at least you could make the case that we actually had no economy. We had so completely shut down the economy that we were looking to send money as a substitute for the economy. Now, we've got a very different situation. The economy grew at 33% last quarter. We've got very acute problems within certain employment groups, right? People who work for restaurants and hotels and travel and entertainment, devastated. But we do not have a global macroeconomic depression underway at all. So it makes no sense to be sending this out to everybody who has a pulse. Oh, by the way, you actually don't need a pulse. Anyone who died this year, dead people are going to get the checks too. I wonder if it's enough stimulus for them.
Dead people will get the checks. I just think it's so fun. He's so angry. Like, apparently, if you died, you'll still get a stimulus check. Why do dead people need a check? And then, there's someone's grandma sitting at home going, well, dead people getting checks. I don't support that. Dead people. We need to reevaluate this, Jimmy. Don't you think so? Oh, come on, man. Come on, Toomey. Come on. Okay. So he said a lot of things that are just ridiculous. So let's talk about the first thing he said. The first thing that he said was that the economy is doing well. Economy's not doing well. The stock market is doing well. There's a difference between the economy doing well and the stock market doing well. So I'm going to hit you with some statistics, Toomey. The white poverty rate, which was previously in the single digits, is up to 12.3%. So 12.3% of white individuals in the month of August were were in poverty. So more than 3% of white individuals fell into poverty. That's only, a couple million people. But no big deal. Also in August, according to PBS, for black people, poverty rate increased to 26.3, and for Hispanics, it increased to 26.9. So not only are more people in poverty, and that's a huge percentage of the population. If 25% of a specific group has fallen into poverty, 12% for whites is bad enough, but you're talking 26%, 26.3 for blacks and 26.9. So a quarter of blacks and a quarter of Hispanics are now in poverty. One quarter. in 1 month. Now, this also means that the wealth gap between whites and blacks is widening. But beyond that, to have this many people from any group in poverty is unacceptable. And this is statistics from August. And according to also the Washington Post, nearly 8 million Americans have fallen into poverty since the summer. So that statistic, the first statistic I read you was from August. The Washington Post is saying, well, since the summer ended, meaning September through now, an additional 8 million people have fallen into poverty. But Toomey says most people have been unaffected by COVID. No, most people have not. If you work in an industry that has been closed, like a restaurant, music, performance, venues, like I live in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Eagles employ like 20,000 people or something crazy. All these people don't have income. All these people do not have jobs. All these people are missing employment, right? And in a city like Philadelphia, all the industries he mentioned, the majority of the people work in them. That's number one. But beyond that, number two, people are taking pay cuts. I myself, for my job, have experienced pay cuts. You know, I'm a gig worker, and they have cut the rate of money that we get. So we now get less now than we did before the pandemic. My friend who, he's a blue collar worker. He works in a factory, but he has a pretty nice salary. He's taking a pay cut. So he's like, oh man, now I'm going to be making less money for the same amount of hours. Or you know what? No, some people, I have another friend who he didn't take a pay cut. Instead, but he effectively did. So they're paying him the same amount of hour, but they're now just reducing him from 5 days a week to 3.5 days a week or 4 days a week. So he's making less money because he's working less days. You know, it's another way of doing a pay cut. So a lot of people are receiving pay cuts. Also, they said, there were statistics out that said about half of Americans couldn't pay their rent. Or were late on their rent. They said there was a statistic that came out over the summer. It said 56% of white people were confident that they were going to be able to pay their rent the next month. You know what that means, right? That means that the other 44% were not confident. Just 26% of blacks said that they were confident that they could pay their rent. 26%. That means 74% of them weren't confident. And this was back in August. Do you think that their rent just magically got paid somehow now that it's December? So that's number one. Number two, like I said, man, I'm not even going to go into the dead people thing. It's just trying to fearmonger. He was so angry. Oh, my great-grandmother died last week and she's getting a check. Oh, how dare they? But beyond that, all right, so he says the economy's gotten better. It has not. The stock market has gotten better. And our GDP has went up because of the stock market. You know, it has increased because of the stock market. The economy has not gotten better. The economy's gotten worse. Much, much worse. That's number two. Number three, even if people are working people, like my parents, working people who did not get their income affected by COVID-19, they're still struggling anyway on a day-to-day basis. They were struggling before the pandemic. So if they're getting a $600 check, they're like, oh man, this is great because I need all the help I can get. So to act like that just because people haven't lost their job or they haven't had their wages cut, that they don't need more money is ridiculous. We're the richest country in the world, yet somehow we have so many people in poverty. Every country has poor people, but not every country has poor people who can't afford health insurance and who can't barely afford their rent month to month. We're clearly doing something wrong compared to the rest of the world. And now, I'll talk about where I agree with Toomey. I actually agree with him that we should not be sending out $600 checks. We should be sending out at least $2,000 checks. At least $2,000 checks. So yes, don't send out the 600, send out 2,000. What about that, Toomey? Are you going to do it? But yeah, this guy's just clearly an idiot. I don't know. To be honest, Toomey, I'm so happy that he's not running for re-election because he only got into, if you know anything about Pennsylvania, because I'm from here, the only reason he got elected was because he did not support abortion, and he also did not support gay marriage when that was a thing. So basically, this guy, he has no ideology, but gay marriage is bad, abortion bad, don't spend money. That's his ideology. He has no real ideology. Oh, but he does. Wait a minute. Because Pat Toomey has voted for tax cuts. He voted for the Trump tax cuts, where 86% of the wealth went to the top 1%. And guess what, Toomey? You said we can't afford it and that we need to balance the budget. That tax cut added $2.3 trillion to the national debt. $2.3 trillion. So you're not even mad about balancing the budget. You just don't want poor people to get it. Because if poor people need something in this country, we can't afford it. But if the top 1% needs $2.3 trillion, oh yeah, it's cool, I got you. Which is funny because that's the exact same amount that the stimulus check would cost if we brought it up to $2,000. It would be a $2.3 trillion bill. Well, the tax cuts, the Trump tax cuts, which you voted for, went to the 86% of the benefits went to the top 1%, and that tax cut cost us $2.3 trillion in national debt. So there you go. There you go, Toomey. There you go. That's where the money went. That's why we quote unquote can't afford it. Because you and your buddies in Washington, D.C. keep giving it to rich people who don't need it. They really don't need it. They really, really, really don't need it. But you're going to give it to them anyway. Because that's what you do. That's what you do. You look out for corporate interests. You look out for the wealthy. And you don't even look out for the people in your own damn state who have been slipping into poverty ever since the Industrial Revolution ended and factories started packing up and leaving. Ridiculous. It's a disgrace. And you know what? I'm so happy that he will no longer be in Congress. He says he's retiring, that he's not going to run for re-election. He should have retired years ago. He's been sitting there doing nothing but collecting a pension. And by the way, he says there is no macro depression, worldwide depression. Yes, there is. There is so. We're already in it. We're in it already. What are you talking about? There's no depression. Look at not just the United States. Look at China. Look at Europe. Look at Africa. Look everywhere across the world. Every country, every continent is experiencing some type of economic downturn. And there is a worldwide depression. And the United States arguably has the worst. And the American dollar is the backup currency for the rest of the world. So yes, there will be a depression. There already is one. This guy must have like 2 brain cells. Like, who put him in office? Who voted for this guy? Oh my God, get him out of here, guys. Get him out.